Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Henna. I am a self-improvement coach, trauma coach, and content creator. I also practice medicine as a PA. And this video we are going to be talking about the concept of the inner child, as well as giving tips on how to heal your inner child. Now, I put out a video on this on Instagram and TikTok, and I didn't expect it to do as well as it did. So obviously that told me that this is a topic that a lot of people are interested in and want to learn more about. So if you're one of those people, then please keep watching. I run a trauma group coaching program that is specifically tailored for Muslims who are dealing with the effects of chronic trauma in their life, whether it's childhood trauma, interpersonal trauma, and the idea of inner child healing is so powerful, and it's something I do with my clients. And in fact, in this video, I'm going to literally be pulling, I have my program up here, the group coaching program, right up in front of me. I'm going to be pulling the exact content that I use for my clients and using it with you guys. Now, this is just a small portion of the program, which is a 10-week program. If you're interested in this program or any more information, including cost, I'm very big about price transparency. That's all going to be in the description below, but that's not what this video is about. So what is the inner child? The inner child as a concept was introduced by psychologist Carl Jung. Now, if you've ever taken an introduction to psychology course, you probably know who Carl Jung was. He's someone who has had a profound effect on modern psychology. The way I describe the inner child is it's essentially the part of us, the metaphorical part of us, that represents the needs that were not met for us as a child. So these are the needs that we just did not get met. Now, there are a lot of people kind of will ask, well, how do you know, like, when your inner child is acting out, or what, or whether it's just you? And a few different ways that I can answer this is, one good telltale sign that it's your inner child that's acting out is, are you reacting out of proportion to the situation in a way that you would not normally react? That's one. And two, the person, usually, because this is usually interpersonal conflict, the person that you are reacting with, do they remind you of someone from your childhood who maybe caused you a lot of distress? Or is it a person from your childhood, the actual person themselves, maybe a parent or a sibling or a childhood friend who is triggering these feelings? A lot of our trauma responses that we have actually developed in us as children. Right? The trauma responses developed because it was a means of us as these young individuals who really don't have, a great capacity to process trauma, to protect ourselves. That's why we behaved the way we did. Now, sometimes it wasn't the best of behaviors in the long term, and sometimes it wasn't the most ideal circumstance, but the point was we were trying to protect ourselves and lower the level of insult to our nervous systems. So these personality traits that we have sometimes are also trauma responses, unfortunately. And so because of that, personality traits are long-standing, and they are with us for a very long time, and we can alter them kind of one way or another on a spectrum. But if we don't understand what their certain parts of our personality are representing an inner child versus the adult version of ourselves, then we might start to react in ways that are actually not conducive for our long-standing wellness, because we have inner child healing to do that we're just not doing. So another thing to think about when it comes to inner child healing is sometimes our inner child just had to grow up too quickly. And you can understand that, because just think, were you told very often when you were younger, you're very mature for your age? Think about that as an adult and think deeply. And obviously I can't diagnose you guys because I don't know what your situations are, but do you feel like the reason you had that level of maturity that you had as a child was because you felt like you needed to take on adult behaviors and adult mentalities in order to just operate day to day, or even to survive in whatever your environment is? Your inner child is going to be the manifestation of all of that. Our inner child is going to come and take the wheel whenever we are starting to feel very overwhelmed and feeling like we're being put back in a place that a metaphorical situation that we were in as a child, and can't do anything about. Now, once you heal, your inner child is not going to be taking over anymore. And again, this is a metaphorical side of us. This is a subconscious side of us. We don't necessarily realize in the thick of it that that's what's happening. But the power of self-improvement, this is something, I talk about all the time, is that with time and iteration, you are going to be able to move these reactions you have. You're going to actually be able to bring awareness to what's going on for you. And once you have awareness, that's one step closer to actually being able to change the outcome. So what are different things? What is the core of how to heal your inner child? Now, the concept of inner child healing can be called reparenting. So as a child, right, every child has parents, whether or not they knew their parents, whether they were adopted, but they have parents. And the primary role of the parent is they are supposed to care for the child and serve their child throughout the developmental stages, right? An infant cannot feed themselves or change themselves. A child is not supposed to be, a 5-year-old is not supposed to be making dinner for themselves or giving themselves showers, right? They're supposed to be instructed and guided by adults who are protecting them. When that wasn't necessarily done to the highest extent that it should be, and sometimes, we might have had parents that were really good at taking care of our physical needs, but really neglected the emotional needs. In that situation, we still need those needs to be met. And so as adults, we can't necessarily go back to those individuals and be like, well, I need you to start giving me emotional support and capacity like you were supposed to as a child. One, because those people just might not have ever learned to, so we're kind of beating a dead horse there. But two, we're adults now, and we have a certain level of autonomy to discover that for ourselves. As adults, we can now reparent, meaning we can become the parents to our inner child. We can give ourselves the healing that we never got from our caregivers or in our childhood. We can be the adults that our inner child needed when we were younger. So that is a very powerful concept, and I think it's it's very liberating when you think of that, right? That you don't need the people who, you feel messed up or failed you or whatever. You don't need them to be the ones to fix the situation. You can actually do it. There's a very common metaphor you'll hear in just trauma healing in general and self-improvement is it's not your fault, but it's your problem, right? It's not your fault that you underwent abuse as a child if that's what you went through. It's not your fault that you went through traumatic experiences as a child if that's what you experienced. But it's your problem now. It's the hand you're dealt, meaning you are the one that has to deal with it, and you have to take the necessary steps to resolve it. And then steps are possible, right? Healing is possible. It doesn't even take as long as the abuse you were withstanding. It doesn't take that long to heal. You can heal much faster. So reparenting just looks like give your inner child the things that your inner child needed, but now is an adult. And I'll hear people who've done inner child healing, and they'll be doing something that is like, as adults, it's very playful and fun, and they'll just say, my inner child loves this. And so you very much know when your inner child is actually healing, because you'll start to feel this sense of joy and peace that you would have experienced as a kid if you were having the same exact experience. So for example, I had a client who was saying that we were doing the inner child healing, and they had an assignment to do one thing that heals their inner child that week. And she had mentioned that she was walking with a family member, and they came across a bunch of leaves, and they started jumping on the leaves and like hearing the crunch of the leaves below their feet. And she said, my inner child absolutely loved that. And this is someone you can tell who probably, would have gotten yelled at or been told that they're behaving, they're being stupid, or to stop doing that when they were a kid. Now as an adult, she's able to do this, and it doesn't necessarily have any utility, right? It's not serving like some higher level purpose in her life, but it is showing the inner child version of her. And now you can do things that are just meant to be silly and just meant to be fun, and not be yelled at or disciplined for it. So that's what inner child healing is, right? The things that you needed as a child, you are now giving them to you. Reparenting can look like a lot of different things. So a few examples, and I'm just looking over at my notes, right, is one, it can look like validating emotions when we're emotional. So many people I've heard have this experience where, let's say you were crying about something, and as a child, you were really distressed by it, and you were told by the adult in the situation, shut up or stop crying. I'll give you something to cry about, right? You were basically told stop having the emotional reaction to whatever it is that for you warranted an emotional reaction. Suppress it, or there's going to be a harsh consequence. That is not how a child is supposed to be spoken to. Emotions and the ability to get through the emotions in a healthy way and navigate those emotions, that is supposed to be assisted through the guidance of adult, and it is a necessary part of a human's development. When we shut that down, we fracture an individual's sense of safe emotional reaction. And one of two things either happen. They learn to react overly emotionally into a point where it's not conducive to the situation they're in, or they suppress it and end up in a situation where they become people pleasers, or they are at a higher likelihood for abuse, whether it's actual full-blown physical abuse, or if it's emotional abuse, or just people taking advantage, maybe not in a very obvious way, but it's not healthy. So validating emotions is one way you can reparent. And that just looks like when you're feeling an emotion, instead of shutting it down, pushing it away, you tell yourself, hey, what's wrong? You actually ask yourself questions. You reassure yourself if that's what you need. You validate yourself if that's what you need. Hey, you're angry about this. It's okay to be angry. I would be angry too. That's something normal to be angry about. Whatever, as an example, if there was something that angered you. If you start having like overly reactionary thoughts, because you never had the license to get through those thoughts as a child, now you're having them as an adult, you walk yourself through that process, right? Maybe you're starting to feel very vengeful, right? And the vengefulness is a trauma reaction. It's not actually because the situation that you're angry about warrants revenge, but you walk yourself through that. Hey, this is obviously making you really angry, but it's not as big of a deal, and things will be okay tomorrow. Whatever. You can apply this concept to really any situation. Reparenting can also look like giving yourself encouragement if you lacked encouragement. If there was, if there were things that you were afraid to do as a child and you really needed reassurance from your parents that you could do it, or your caregivers, and you didn't get that, then as an adult, you probably struggle with a lack of self-esteem and self-confidence. So reparenting can look like, hey, you can do this. Hey, you've done this before. Actually, you have the skill set to do whatever. Just try. It's okay if you mess up. It's okay if you fall short. I had someone who had told me, when you fail, it's not about the failure, it's about how you get up. And I remember that just being so relieving to my inner child to hear that. And it's something I replay to myself over and over again, because I'll be very honest and frank with you guys. Running just even a company and having to do this kind of from scratch, there's a lot of points in time where your confidence is kind of shaken, because it's the first time that I'm doing something like this to this extent. And obviously life doesn't just stop when you're running a company. There are other stressors in life that I'm dealing with. And so failure can be very nerve-wracking, because the fear is, if I fall, am I going to be brave enough to get back up again, right? If a YouTube video doesn't do well, and obviously in the very beginning, most of your YouTube videos aren't necessarily doing well, am I just going to give up and not continue? And so my inner child needed to hear, hey, you can do this. I believe in you. And if you do fall short, then you get up, you figure something new out, and you try again, right? One last thing that I'll put out there, and this is a really important thing that actually I learned from Brene Brown, who is a researcher on vulnerability, and she's someone who's actually become quite famous because of her story on deciding to research vulnerability. And one thing she talks about very often is the importance of adults setting time for play, and this is directly connected to inner child healing, because a lot of people who have inner child trauma never got to just be kids, never got to play and mess around and run around and just be silly, because kids are silly and they break things and they mess around. And if that was suppressed as a child, as an adult, you need that. Like, this is actually a very important correlative factor to mental well-being and mental health, your ability to just play. So inner child healing can look like, maybe some people might find the things that they actually used to want to do as a child or like to do as a child and start doing it as an adult. Right? Maybe it was hobbies that you had as a kid that you abandoned and you come back to it, right? I've seen a lot of people who used to play the drums or play video games as a kid, and then they left it because of adulthood, and now they come back to it. Or, people who really wanted to be a ballerina or do karate as a kid and never got the opportunity for whatever reason, and decide to do it as an adult. Make time for your play, make time for your relaxation. This is such an important part. Even the most widely successful business CEOs make time for this, because you need that unwinding to heal. So that is all I've got for you in this video, guys. I hope it was helpful and that you found something out that was valuable when it comes to inner child healing. If you are a subscriber and you've made it this far, I have a request for you. Please comment below, I subscribed. I want to reply to that comment with something special for all people who are supporting me this early on in the journey. Inshallah, I anticipate that this channel is going to grow because I intend to continue with this content, but I want to be there to be able to say thank you to the people who were there from day one. So if that is you, please comment. If that is not you, then subscribe and go ahead and comment I subscribed. Like this video and share with people that you think would benefit from it. And if you are interested in trauma group coaching or one-on-one self-improvement coaching, you can go ahead and look at the description for links. I also have a newsletter where if you sign up, you will get 2 free ebooks, one on a guide to healing trauma and another on God-conscious self-improvement, absolutely free. It'll be sent to your email immediately as soon as you sign up. That's also in the link below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and Assalamu alaikum.